everyone. My name is Vicky Denton. I'm the host of F+L Webcast, editor-in-chief, and CEO of F+L Asia. Today, we have a guest, Darryl Purificati. Darryl is actually very well known to a lot of people. He's been in the industry for a very long time, but I'm going to describe what he's done, who he is in his own words. Darryl, welcome to F+L Webcast.
Thanks, Vicky. Good to be here. Thanks for the invite.
So
Um, so
Daryl,
yeah,
start
I was going to say,
describing your long career.
my name's Darryl Purificati. I'm currently the senior technical advisor for OEM and automotive for HF Sinclair. I represent the Petro-Canada Lubricants brand. I've been working for Petro-Canada for just over 31 years now. Had a long resume full of different jobs from research and development, fuels, technical advisor, product specialist. So it's been a varied career over the past 30 years working in both lubricants and fuels. Over the past 12 years, I've been doing this OEM and automotive world work, and part of that is the industry work with API.
So Daryl, you just recently stepped down as chair of the American Petroleum Institute Lubricants Group. So tell us what the Lubricants Group is and what is the role of API in the bigger world of lubricants. Why is this work so important to all of us?
Yeah, so API, the American Petroleum Institute, it's a organization that lobbies and advocates for the oil and energy industry. The specific portion of API that I did some work for, represented my company, was part of the Lubricants Group, and one of their primary roles is overseeing API, a document known as API 1509, which is the Engine Oil Licensing Certification System document. That is critical to maintaining a standard for oils, engine oils, both light duty passenger car motor oils and heavy duty engine oils, creating, maintaining standards for those classes of engine oils so that people and customers around the world are getting the same material, the same standard of performance for engine oils.
And we're talking about basically two kinds, right? We're talking about passenger car and heavy duty.
Yes, that's correct. That's what's covered in API 1509.
Yes. And I guess the most important, Daryl, is there is an aftermarket audit program.
Absolutely, it's critical. So the 1509 API 1509, when all said and done and products are tested and licensed, they have the ability to put a couple of symbols on a label, which people may or may not be familiar with. One's the starburst, which represents the EOLCS, or what the OEMs have developed. It meets that specification, and the other is the API donut. And the donut is a round symbol. It's found on the back of a label of a licensed product, indicating the viscosity grade, indicating the level. And then API has what they call AMAP, or the Aftermarket Audit Program. And API will go and sample products in the industry to ensure that the product is what they say it has been and what companies have licensed it to. This audit program then ensures that the product that's been licensed is actually what the companies are marketing and selling out in the end, into the market to the end customers.
Yeah, and the interesting thing also is at the end of every cycle of a new specification, API actually, the members of the lubricants group, uh, votes on consumer language. How important is the consumer language?
Every part that is part of the development, from user language to the individual tests, is important. If it wasn't important, we wouldn't vote on it, right? It's a consensus group that takes everything into account from user language to ensure that the description of the individual categories is accurate and representative of the category, right through to all the tests that are included in the specification and the limits for each of those individual tests. It's all very critical in order to maintain that standard, that performance standard that's critical for end use.
So your last meeting, your last API Lubricants Group meeting in December 2025 in Houston, Texas, you actually voted on a ballot. This is for a new specification that actually relates to heavy duty engine oils. Tell us about this ballot.
Yeah, so PC-12 is a proposed category, the 12th proposed category for heavy duty engine oils. And has been developed. It's been in development for the past several years, 5, 6, 7 years. It starts with a request from anybody can submit a request for a new category. The category has to be justified. It's then developed through test development and various other kind of coordinating committees that help provide input to develop that category. And when it's all said and done and everybody says, that's the category we're looking for, we're happy with all of this, then we vote on actual acceptance of the category. So in Houston, like you said, we sent 3 ballots to the membership for voting. One was on user language, one was on adoption of the specification as drafted, and one was on the first license date. So they're all individual ballots. They're all critical to the category, both the development of the category, the implementation of the category, and the acceptance of the category. And that category will, it's in the ballot process now. So once we get all the results back, they will be reviewed, adjudicated if necessary, and adopted. Hopefully that'll happen. I think mid-February. We have some meetings that are scheduled. So by mid-February, we should get kind of closure on PC-12 implementation dates and acceptance of the category.
And more or less the target for the first licensing of PC-12, which actually now has an official name, tell us about it, is what date in the ballot?
January 1st. Yeah, January 1st, 2027 is the proposed date for first licensing of what will be known as CL4 and FB4. So both the higher HTHS, so the conventional HTHS and the low HTHS materials. They have been balloted, and the proposed date is January 1st, 2027. So we're within 12 months. It comes up fast. Seems like a long way away, but a blink of an eye, we've got new products to get out in the market for a new specification.
How many years was CK4 was actually first licensed? Do you recall the date of first licensing of CK4?
2016. You're testing me on that one, Vicky.
Okay,
I
but
want
more
to
or less,
say,
it's almost a decade, isn't it?
yeah,
So
it takes quite some time.
that is a long gap between categories.
It takes time. The jump from CK4 to CL4, from PC-11 to PC-12, if there's no need for a new category, then a new category isn't developed. So we don't just develop a new category for the sake of developing category. These are time intensive, they're resource intensive, they're expensive. And it's difficult. So if you have a very good and robust category, you maintain that category. Now, if there are things that come up over time, whether it's governmental regulations, whether it's new emissions regulations, whether there's new architecture, whether there's a problem or something that shows up in the field that then requires a standard in order to help with that concern in the end use, then those are some of the reasons that a new category gets developed. So for PC-12, it took a while, but the greenhouse gas emissions regulations were being updated have been updated, and there was a schedule for that. That's one of the drivers behind the development of PC-12 is to help with those regulations.
The first licensing date of in the passenger car segment was March 2025 for GF7. But even before the first licensing date, if I recall correctly, ILSAC, which is composed of automotive companies, and they're the main drivers, really, I would say, for new categories because they would have a request and API and the entire industry would take a look at the request, and if the need is agreed that it's there, then the development will start taking place. Why is it that GF8 immediately had to be developed right as soon as GF7 was licensed?
It's a complicated answer. So when GF6 came into the market in 2020, there was a request shortly thereafter for various reasons to move to GF7. During the scoping out of what was then proposed as GF7, there was a proposal put forward within the industry to split the category and to do GF7 on a shorter time frame and then do GF8 on the original time frame. Originally, GF7 was targeted for 2028. There was some feelings within the room that was too long of a gap for some of the requirements and the needs of the industry. So that's how the original request from GF6 to what was then proposed as GF7 ended up in GF7 and GF8. So GF7, which, as you mentioned, is going to be released in March, or was released, first licensed March of 2025. The original proposal with the timeline of 2028 was already in the works. So GF7 was an upgrade to GF6, and GF8 is going to potentially be a larger kind of performance step forward. And the current GF7 is kind of that transition or bridge between GF6 and where a lot of the automakers really wanted to end up in 2028.
And every time there's a new category, it means basically new and possibly one or two or more and new engine tests, developing data, like you mentioned, also bench tests. So it basically involves a budget, money. And then you have the base oil interchange and viscosity grade read across. Who actually puts up the money to do this?
Well, that's a great question. Everybody pitches in. So budgeting, there's a task group that looks specifically at funding, developing the matrices for precision matrix for new tests to make sure that tests are repeatable, reproducible, and discriminating. And then base oil interchange, viscosity grade read across. These are all necessities for category development. Those tests all need to be run. And tests are expensive. So the funding comes, through the funding task force. They develop a budget. The organizations all kind of contribute equally, and then there's some support from some of the test labs that do, kind of the testing and do the yeoman's work in generating that data. There's some support also provided from those laboratories, and everybody works together in a collaborative manner. If one piece falls off or one piece doesn't agree to help out in any way, shape, or form, then the whole system falls apart because it's designed as a collaborative and a consensus way of moving forward in development.
Yeah, so Darryl, you work very closely, of course, with ASTM because ASTM is the main body that develops tests. And ASTM works by consensus, as you mentioned. API Lubricants Group is also a consensus group, or how do you
It is.
adjudicate negatives?
Yeah, it's a consensus group. So through the balloting process, there is a manner of adjudication. There's another document that API has on standards and development that outlines exactly how a proper ballot, proper adjudication methods of ballots. There, because it's a consensus, because it's a consensus body, regardless of anybody's submission, they're all reviewed at the end of a ballot, whether it's a voting or a non-voting member. Comments are all taken under consideration. Everything is addressed, and the adjudication of a ballot is done as well in a consensus manner. The group as a whole decides, the voting members of the group decide whether or not an issue raised, whether it's a comment, an editorial comment, a technical comment, a negative vote, how those are, whether they're persuasive, non-persuasive, and everything is done kind of in a group manner to make sure we get to the proper answer that works for everybody.
So, Darryl, when did you become chair of the API Lubricants Group?
That was 3.5 years ago. So it was my predecessor used to be 2-year terms. It 3.5 years ago, kind of was approached by API asking if I would be willing to take on the chairman role at Lubricants Group, and I said yes, and it's been very rewarding ever since.
So that was around GF6
That was
timeframe.
just after the introduction of GF6. Yeah.
So you basically successfully shepherded GF7 and the start of GF8 and completed PC-12. Uh, so you, as I mentioned earlier, you recently stepped down as the chair of the Lubricants Group. And looking back at these 3.5 years, what do you consider the most significant achievement you made to the group, to the
I
industry as a whole?
so my contribution to the industry as a whole, as chair of the lubricants group, is coordinating all the other groups that actually do the really hard work. I give full props um, to those at NCDT, which actually do the bulk of, that's the committee that develops PC-12. And I was co-chair at AOAP, which is the Auto Oil Advisory Panel that develops GF7 and GF8. And those are the committees that do the bulk of the work. There are a number of other committees at API, whether it's the base oil interchange group, whether it's the matrix design group, whether it's the funding group, the test development groups. They're all doing all of the work and reporting back up to lubricants group. So the lubricants group chair kind of shepherds all of that, and it's the final step really in implementing anything directly into 1509. We have a group that does specific work on category life oversight to make sure to determine obsolescence of categories as testing comes in. They're doing the work, they're generating the data, we're reviewing the data and implementing any recommendations that come in. But those committees are the ones that do all the really good work. So the most significant thing is getting to the end of a category and doing it on budget and on time. And we've been very successful for the most part in staying really close to the proposed timing and coming in on budget or under budget, with all of the resources and all of the activities that are going on. It's always the most satisfying is when you get to the end of a category and implement that on the first license date.
And the oil drain intervals only keep getting longer. Is that right?
Everybody wants everything for nothing, right? It's generally about durability. It's about maintaining the performance of the engine for as long as can be reasonably expected. But of course, oil drain intervals are what the end customer sees, what the people running the rigs, running the units. That's the easiest thing to measure for them. So yeah, oil drain intervals continue to extend. Onboard diagnostics are helping with extending those oil drain intervals, both the heavy duty and the light duty world for sure.
Yeah, so you were talking about all the moving parts that you as chair have to make sure are on budget, on target, have consensus. So, how do you approach finding common ground when these groups have competing technical or even commercial interests?
It's it's a challenge. I enjoy that challenge more than anything because you get to talk to people, you get to understand what makes them move. Um, the automotive, the OEMs, the automotive manufacturers are coming with a set of um, hopes and wants and desires based on their knowledge of their design, their hardware architecture, um, the their products, and they're trying to get that extended drain interval with the durability, with the wear protection, with everything else, including the emissions. And we're working very closely with the technology providers and the additive companies that do the bulk of the development work with some of the requirements that have been proposed. The oil marketers then are looking at, from their standpoint, how to blend that material, how to get it to market, how to sell that product appropriately within the confines of 1509 and every other constraint that we find in the economic world. And finding all the levers and come into common ground is there's a satisfaction in getting there. I will not say that it's easy because it's not. There are some animated discussions, which is entertaining and fun, but we always seem to come to an understanding. Um, it's a negotiation, Vicky, like a lot of things that we deal with in our lives. It's a negotiation. Everybody wants everything. You kind of ask for everything and get most of it, and everybody moves a little bit and finds the right levers, finds the right common ground, and moves forward on that. I wouldn't say that everybody's always happy at the end of the category development, but everybody's always satisfied with where it ended up.
Yeah, I've been an observer of the Lubricants Group, as you know, for a long time. And one of the things that I see when I see you standing there and shepherding all these moving parts is how diplomatic you are. You're almost like an ambassador, making sure that everyone's happy and everyone's getting something out of the deal. I mean, is that a right description
That's
of your job?
kind of you to say. I don't think I've ever been described as diplomatic before, so it's it's a new one, but um, it is. It's the negotiation. It's the determining and the kind of the determination of where that common ground is, and continuing to progress and taking steps forward to get to the end goal. Um, if we stopped at the beginning and waited for everybody to agree on everything, category would never get developed. So I always viewed it as a set of baby steps, moving a little bit every day, but always moving forward. All of those meetings, some of those meetings that you've been, uh, kind of in the audience, and others would agree that there's some of those meetings that you seem like nothing is getting done, and you almost make a step backwards. But I can go back through every meeting that we've ever had and say, yeah, we made at least one step forward, even if it's a small, what seems insignificant. The most insignificant step forward always snowballs into something bigger, and it keeps the ball rolling forward. So, um, if you want to describe that as diplomatic, that's I'll take it.
Yeah, no, 2026 could be a turning point for our industry, right? Uh, we have, perhaps not in the United States, but outside of the United States, electrification is really, I would say, moving forward. China, uh, in some parts of Southeast Asia, definitely in Europe, although uh, the EU seems to have conceded on um, kind of delaying the ban on internal combustion engines. But overall, I think the inevitable is going to happen. Maybe not 2 years from now, maybe not four, but certainly 10 to 20 years. So, um, what do you see for our industry? If you have 50% of that market, maybe, of course, vehicle life is long. So you
Mm.
still have the existing fleet, but the new fleet is going to be electrified. They have different requirements. How do we as an industry adjust to that?
It's a good question. We've seen in the last 10 years kind of these peaks and valleys on the electrified world, where it's going, where it's gonna go, how it's gonna end up, is it getting pulled back? Um, I think the increase in hybridization is going to far outweigh full electrification over the short to mid-term. To that end, there's a subcommittee within API looking at hybrid vehicle engine oils and whether there are specific um, type of performance requirements that are required out of hybrid vehicles as opposed to full electric vehicles. Um, Once electrification comes in a much greater way, that might be 10, 20, 40, 50 years from now, the industry will adjust. It's always adjusted in the past. It always will adjust to uh, whatever's in the forecast and whatever the market demands. The primary goal of API is to or the 1509 document is to make sure that the end customer and the consumer is protected with a performance standard that is more than acceptable, more than just satisfactory. It's a good performance standard to ensure consistency within the industry, right? Um, at the end of the day, if you look at a vehicle, for a consumer vehicle, for the vast majority of us, it's probably the second largest purchase we're going to make in our lives. And honestly, unless you're sitting at those meetings, you might not think twice about the engine oil. So it's critical to keep that vehicle moving. I've always looked at our job as to kind of make sure that that oil, the performance and the quality of the oil that's out in the marketplace allows people to not think about the engine oil. They can take it for granted. Those that want to be educated can look at the Starburst or the donut. They can find the labels. They can find those things in their owner's manuals that recommend certain quality of oil. But if they don't want to, I feel like it's our job to make sure that their vehicles are still protected. There's a lot of stuff in the world we take for granted. This is our little job of making sure that the vehicle, the engine for passenger car and for heavy duty, for all the truck traffic that's out there, can almost be taken for granted. So whether or not the electrification world goes, full electric in 20, 40, 60, 80 years from now, there's always going to be a requirement. It's all about protecting the end consumer to ensure that their vehicles and what gets them from point A to point B is doing what it's supposed to do, the way it was
I think
designed.
I think it's very well said, Darryl. You've had a very long career in the industry, and you're almost like one of those unsung heroes. Looking at your career, what would you say is the most satisfying in what you do?
It's I when I reflect and I'm trying not to sound like I'm going to retire anytime soon because I'm still enjoying myself doing my job. But when I reflect, it's the journey, and it's getting to a point now where there's there's a there's a certain level of respect from my colleagues, um, being uh, being seen as kind of a subject matter expert. I wouldn't necessarily say a leader in the field, but at least somebody who understands this very small portion of the lubricants world to a different level, and getting that kind of respect. And people turning to you for full advisement on things that that they may or may not have even thought about in the past. Um, that gives me a certain level of satisfaction. It's not necessarily this account or this goal or this project that's given me the satisfaction. It's kind of the overarching development of myself as a lubrication specialist that's given me the greatest amount of satisfaction looking back and reflecting.
Yeah, and I think the industry has really benefited from your commitment, your dedication, and we hope there are a lot more people like you around.
It's I'll be honest, it's difficult, right? Working in with API in the industry, um, it's not a beginner's role. You have to have a lot of experience in order to understand what's going on um, in that world, so you can help develop those things. It's not just affecting yourself or your company or your small role in your company. You're affecting something globally. So there's a certain weight associated with doing that kind of work. So I've seen the number of people that are around the tables at the API meetings, and it gives me it gives me comfort knowing that the people that are there um, are are as good as the people that were around the table when I started doing this kind of work 12, 13, just over 13 years ago. There was a group of people sitting around the table, and I'm like, wow, these people know some stuff I'm never going to know. And because of their age and experience, they move on and retire. You never think they're going to be replaced, and to a certain extent, they can't be replaced. But the people that are sitting around the table today are doing a fantastic job, continuing in the development of the categories and moving everything forward as industry demands.
Do you foresee another category for heavy duty PC-13 with the emissions rollback happening in the United States?
Yes, I do see a new category. I do not have any inside information. I'm not confirming that, but everything always moves forward. If we just look at the trajectory of kind of product quality over time, there will be a new category. What it looks like, I have no idea. But over time, the product performance, whether it's design, architectural design of the engine, whether it's based on greenhouse gas emissions, maybe albeit on a slower scale than what some are projecting. Whatever those reasons are, there will be some performance requirements, some performance upgrade requirement eventually. I can't say the time frame. It might be 10 years from now, give or take. Um, Engine tests that are in the industry today may become obsolete and they'll need replacements. That is an impetus for a new category as well. It will always move forward. I have full confidence there will be a PC-13 at some time, and I have full confidence there will be a GF9 after GF8. I'll gladly say it's probably after I have retired, but it's
Or
I
maybe
I
not.
think I think or maybe not, but I think for sure we will see a new category at some point in the future. It's just the nature of the beast.
Well, Darryl, thank you so much for your time, for sharing with us your experience at API Lubricants Group. And we wish you all the best in continuing doing what you're doing.
Thank you very much, Vicky. I appreciate your time tonight and the invite, and we'll see you at some meetings in the future for sure. Thank you very
Very
much.
great. Very grateful. Thank you so much, Darryl. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Thanks, Vicky. Bye bye.